make sure I work this one. Hi everybody, yeah, I'm Donna, obviously. So I'm going to talk about occupational health, and hopefully, if nothing else, I'll make you think. Because probably, do you think you put as much energy into health as you do safety? Who thinks they do? Oh God, no one. One, two, probably from the same company. But that's okay. Let's have a think about that as we go. So I guess that's going to be my challenge, that over this time, think about how I do all this safety stuff, but what do I do in health, okay? And Paul even said they have a safety day, and that's great, but why not have a health and safety day? Just something to think about? So let's go through this. The biggest challenge I have for you people to think about is that we go on and on about how many people die from injuries in the workplace, and we get about 75 people die on the job from an injury. And that's where we tend to put our time and energy, isn't it, into stopping those injuries. But the reality is that about 2 people die every day from a work-related disease. Does that tell us that maybe we need to rethink how we're doing things? I think it does. So maybe have a think about that. So, because 2 people a day is a hell of a lot. And if you looked at your workplace and if 2 of them died every day from work-related disease, you might not have any workers left in a month. So have a think about that one. So look, the biggest thing I guess we find, I mean, I've been doing health and safety for 20 years and, you know, I feel like I've been knocking around for a while, to be honest. And few of you probably look at me and think I have. But some of you know me and think, God help us. But the reality is, I still feel like I'm saying the same things that I said in the 90s. And I was an inspector for about 4 years in the 90s, and I said some of these things then. And, you know, I'm a bit older and wiser now, and I'm still saying the same things. So I think, you know, for those of you who've been around a while, and most of you look about my age, well, at least half of you, you know, are you doing anything different than you were in the 90s? And some of you probably aren't, to be perfectly honest. So the biggest thing out there is the lack of awareness out there. A couple of inspectors went out to a site the other day. They looked at a process that was using formaldehyde. They felt quite nauseous very quickly when they were on site. They asked the workers what they were working with. They had no PPE on, incidentally. And the workers said, oh, we don't know. We don't know. Then they went and asked a manager, what are those guys working with? It was a chemical process. And the manager said, oh, I don't know, here's a folder of safety data sheets, and slapped it on the table. And he didn't even know what they were working with. And you think, oh, that's terrible. But the reality is that's what we're seeing every day. And every week the inspectors in my office come back and will have a conversation like that with me. So I think that says something about what we're up to out there. We're also just really complacent, that we think noise is fine. We're all used to noise, aren't we? I mean, I'm half deaf, probably a good thing, to be honest, and so some of you be quite deaf. And we just get used to it, we get really complacent about it. We think our workplace is noisy, our workplace is dusty, hey, we're just used to it, and hey, everyone just tends to put up with it. So, and as I said, workers don't know what they're working with. They don't know that they can get sick, and they don't like to ask. They don't like to kick up a stink because they're often really worried about their jobs. One thing to think with chemicals is the exposure, what you relate it to is how big is the dose and the frequency. And a really easy way to think of it is like if you take a Nurofen tablet, say 1 a day for 10 days for a headache, hopefully your headaches are going to last that long, but if you take a tablet, you'll be okay, won't you? What happens if you take 10 tablets all at once? You feel pretty crap. Okay. In fact, if you take a packet of Panadol all at once, you can die, unless you get into hospital really quickly. So think of that with chemicals. A little bit, you may be okay if it's a little bit over a period of time, but you give people a big dose of a chemical and they will get sick. That's the reality of it. So, as Mark has talked about, in the manufacturing sector, we're concentrating on noise with some vibration as well, and the airborne contaminants. And we know that one of the main reasons that people die from occupational disease is due to respiratory disease. That's a fact, I'm not making it up, that's reality. And in your workplaces, you are exposing people to respiratory hazards, and you are placing them at risk of getting sick and of dying. Quite simple. So you need to think about that, you need to think about how you're going to manage it. So any process there, and Marcus put that slide up before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but any dust, fume, chemical, gas, mist that's part of your process could potentially make someone sick. So the inspectors, as Marcus talked about, look at this process of identify, assess, control, document and monitor. Now we tend to do that for our safety hazards, don't we? But when we look at our occupational health hazards, people don't tend to follow this process. It's exactly the same, honestly it is. You go out there, you identify what could make people sick, and you follow exactly the same process. And that's what our inspectors want to see. And often they'll say, have you thought about occupational health hazards? What occupational health hazards you've identified? And people go, oh, I think there's a bit of noise out there. And that's usually all they think about. And often noise is on the hazard register, and it's been, what they plonk next to it is PPE. And that's often all you do. Sound familiar? I'm sure there's some head nods out there. Especially, you know, there will be, won't there? That's the reality of what we do. We plonk PPE on people and hope for the best. And we hope like how they wear it. So follow that process for your OC health hazards and it will work exactly the same. As I say, it's your hazard management system. OC health, it's not something over there that you get round to when you've got time. It's what you just do as part of your whole hazard management system. And the inspectors will be looking for it. And some of you have had the pleasure of us. I don't know if many of you have had me in front of you. God help you. But that's what we're looking for. Okay, quite simple. We do it for a machine, do it for your OC health hazards. Your airborne contaminants and noise. Focus in on those people and go through exactly the same process. And the inspectors will talk to you about that. And they are there to give you some advice as well, okay? So do ask them for some help. Okay, so what we're looking for when we come on site as inspectors is one of the things we'll ask you is, have you got airborne contaminants? And we'll talk about dust and fumes and chemicals. And then we'll ask you if you've done any workplace exposure assessments. So that means, have you ever checked what the levels of chemicals or dust or fumes are in your workplace? Put your hand up if you've done workplace exposure assessments in your workplace. Brilliant. That's great. Okay. But lots haven't. But well done to those people who have. So what are you measuring, people? Someone yell out to me. Dust? Sorry? Yep, I'm a bit deaf, as I said, so I might have to tell me later. But fumes from grinding. Well, I got that. Fumes, great. Thanks, Catherine. As I said, I am deaf. Fumes from grinding, great. That's good. Okay, so that's what we want you to do. So I want you to think about this. Write down on your piece of paper that you're going to go and sort out workplace exposure assessments. Don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Nab me as I go. And there's a few inspectors in the room too, so nab one of them. They've all got uniforms on, most of them. I can point to them if you can't see them. I don't wear a uniform. Probably wouldn't fit. What else? Workplace exposure. Right, once you test the atmosphere for airborne contaminants, what we do is we compare it to what we call the workplace exposure standards. Anyone heard of those? Oh, good God, you have. That's great. So they're on our website. Hopefully most of you know where that is by now. You can look up a chemical in that book. For some of you, you'll just think, I don't have a clue what this means. You're going to need some help in this space, okay? So you can ask us, but you may have to get an external consultant to help you with that as well, okay? So pick and choose who you get to help. There'll be a bit of advice there. This is really important. And a noise survey, you can do your own preliminary noise survey. If you've got a smartphone, you can put an app on it. There's a free app that you can download, and you can do a preliminary noise survey. But if you're showing lots of problems, lots of concerns, you need to get someone, a competent person from outside your organisation to do that for you. But a lot of you will be able to do that preliminary one with the app, or even a noise meter is not actually that expensive to buy from somewhere like Dick Smith, somewhere like that, I guess. But you know, I really encourage you to do the noise survey. It is really straightforward. Because the inspectors, and I've been in loads of workplaces, the biggest noisy thing is the radio. It drives me nuts when I go into workplaces, and I often have to ask them to turn it down. I mean, I couldn't even hear someone saying fumes from grinding. So imagine what I'm like in a workplace when there's a radio blasting in my ear. So it usually goes off, I might add. It doesn't always go down well, but it is really noisy, so think about how you're managing that, guys. Okay, this guy's fully kitted up. He's got all the gear on, and he's even had his respiratory protection fit tested. Who does fit testing? Right, well that's a poor show of hands. So we'll talk a bit about that too, but you need to do fit testing. If anyone wears respiratory protective equipment, it needs to be fit tested, because we know a lot of the research shows us that most respiratory protection doesn't actually work because it's not fitting properly to people. He's got earplugs in, by the way, if you think wonder if he hasn't. You can see that, that's good. So I just quickly flick through. We know that in the manufacturing sector, it's a really noisy sector. So there's loads of information on the website, any website about noise, which will tell you what's going on. So in this country, if you're exposed to noise over 85 decibels, you do need to manage it. Okay, you have to, like Marcus said, try and get rid of the noise first. Try and remove workers from it, or look at your machine, is it well maintained? Look at all that before you go putting hearing protection on people. Try and manage it in other ways. But look, this is the noise levels, over 85, okay? Same in the wood and paper, really, this is probably the noisiest, to be honest, over 97, up around 100. You're wondering why people are deaf? That's me when I go into a workplace. That's how I feel sometimes. It's so noisy, but people get so used to it. And there's your engineering sector, really noisy, okay? So a challenge, go out there and do a noise survey, get that app onto your phone, buy a noise meter, and go around and see what the noise levels are that you're exposing people to. And involve your employees in that so they can see. Okay, do we need to do health monitoring? I go into workplaces, as the inspectors do, and we talk about health monitoring, the need to do it, and people go, is that new? I didn't know that. And I go, well, it's been around for about 20 years. So that sort of, maybe that says something about the legislation as well. It is a legal requirement under Section 10 of the current Health and Safety and Employment Act that you do complete health monitoring if you can only minimise your health hazards. And most of you have said that you've got health hazards, you've got dust, fumes, noise. So legally, under the Act, you're required to do health monitoring of a sort. Now look, this is going to step up with the new legislation, so get your act together now, that'd be my advice. Because with the new legislation, it's actually tougher with the health monitoring. This is fairly general at the moment. So you do need to get your act together and get this sorted. And you will have to get an external person to come and do it. It has to be a competent person, not someone who just decides to do hearing tests on everyone. Obviously that wouldn't work. Get people's consent. You get the odd person who will say they don't want it done, but often if you get the nurse who comes in to do the testing, let her have a chat to that person and they can often allay any fears that they've got. Some people are worried they're going to lose their job if they're found out to be deaf. So be aware of that, okay? So are you protected? Just think about it, okay? So if you're going to give PPE, make sure it fits and that people know how to wear it. And with the hearing protection, the biggest thing we see is the plugs sticking out. They're not working. You might as well put them up your nose, to be honest. Probably be just as effective. They just don't work. And also they're usually filthy, and guys have filthy, dirty hands, and women, and they scrunch them all up in their greasy hands and they shove them in their ear and it pops back out. It's not working. And Marcus talked about that before with ill-fitting equipment. And 59% of those ACC noise claims relate to PPE that doesn't fit properly. Okay, so if you've got plugs floating around out there, just have a good think whether that is the best thing to actually be using. And where you're storing your equipment and looking after equipment. When you get your hearing test done, make it part of the hearing test that when the nurse is there, that the workers bring their hearing protection and show the nurse. And then that's an opportunity for her to look if it needs to be maintained. Like you might want to have a box of new plugs there, or the inners that you can replace. Get that done as part of your annual hearing tests, and it's a good chance for the nurse to talk about the need for hearing protection as well. Nice and simple. And train and educate, you've got to do that under the legislation. Make sure it's worn, for God's sakes. The biggest thing I find actually, which I get really sick of, is I go into a workplace and a manager will come in with me and they'll just come in like I am now. No safety shoes on, no hearing protection, nothing. And yet he's telling all his workers to wear it. Some of you have probably done that, I'm sure you have. But yes, it's the old, walk the talk. And you stand there when you're doing an inspection and you can see the office worker comes through to give something to one of the workers. She's got no hearing protection on, she's got her high heels on. And a salesman comes through, visitors come through. So, it's one rule for all. And if you're going to put signs up to wear hearing protection, everybody wears hearing protection. Otherwise, people just get sick of it and they say, why do I have to wear it? My manager doesn't bother wearing it when he comes through. The GM, the CEO. Okay, so you need to have a program in place. Noise surveys every 4 or 5 years, or if your processes change, get a survey done. As I say, you can do that pre-survey with your app. Hearing tests, if they're exposed regularly to noise levels over 85 decibels, really good idea to get pre-employments done. That sets up a baseline. If you don't do pre-employments, do try and do a baseline within 3 months of that person starting. You want to know if they were deaf before they started with you, and that will also help if an ACC claim ever occurs. And then if the noise levels are regularly over 85, you will need to do annual testing. And then an exit test is also a good idea. Most of us don't. Does anyone do exit testing? Yeah, it's not common. Great. It's not common. Oh God, I'm running out of time, far out. Okay, make sure you follow up the abnormal results. The most common thing I see is that people get the report, they go, oh that's great, we've done our annual hearing, and they put it in the filing cabinet and do nothing with it. Some of you might do that. There's some requirements to report noise-induced hearing loss to us. There's a hearing test. Code of practice for noise, find it. It's on the website. You might need a bit of help interpreting that, but some good straightforward information. Respiratory program, I won't take too long, Kate. As I said, fit testing is really important. The biggest thing with this, again, is you go into a work site and the respiratory protection is hanging up on a hook in a dirty, filthy, dusty environment, and then the woman grabs it and they put it on. Waste of time. So maintenance and storage is really important with that. And if you're looking with a respiratory program where people are regularly exposed to dust, fumes, etc., you will need to look at lung function testing and a respiratory questionnaire. Now, when the new legislation comes out, there will be more guidance around at what levels you require the different levels of testing to be done. But at the moment, it is pretty much an annual lung function and a respiratory questionnaire. And follow up those abnormal results, please. Lung function there, that's what you do, you blow into a machine. And I've run out of time. But that was some examples of different things that I've seen people exposed to or our inspectors have talked about. And my voice is going to go, so it's probably a good time for me to be quiet. Thank you.